Business Value podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their business on their terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Now here's your host, CEO of Mastery Partners, Tom Bronson.
Hello, this is Jim Roddy, and welcome to Maximize Business Value, a podcast for business owners who are passionate about building long-term sustainable value in their businesses. Now, this is my fifth appearance on the Maximize Business podcast, one time for each of my books, The Walk-On Method to Career and Business Success, and then also Higher Like You Just Beat Cancer. Both of those are available one click away on Amazon. And then twice I interviewed your favorite host, Tom Bronson, about two of his businesses. And today I'm back here to interview Tom to wrap up the series on books written by certified exit planning advisors. Now, Tom's new book comes out this week. It's called The Maximize Business Value Playbook, 65 Specific Actions to Dramatically Increase the Value of Your Business. And on a personal note, I was honored to write the foreword for Tom's book, and I'm honored to be back here on the pod. Tom, welcome to your podcast, Maximize Business Value.
Thanks, Jim. It's always surreal when this happens, right? That someone is hosting my podcast. I will say that I'm a little disappointed in myself because I knew when you were coming up to this number 5, I really wanted to get you one of those Saturday Night Live number 5 smoking jackets. And we made a heroic effort in the last week, but couldn't find one. But next time I see you, perhaps I'll have a smoking jacket with a number 5 on it because, I don't think anybody will ever pass you in that.
Well, I appreciate that. But again, I moved from Erie, Pennsylvania down south to Raleigh. I might need more of a light jacket or a t-shirt because smoking jackets down here, it's a little bit too warm. Up in Erie, I would have needed a parka. So,
well, that's great because that's a lot less expensive if I get you a t-shirt.
Yeah, get me one so I can show off my guns too, please.
For sure.
So, Tom, it's great to connect with you again. Can you tell the audience who doesn't know about your background, give that story, and then also why you became a certified exit planning advisor?
Sure. My background, most of course, our listeners would know this, but to folks that are new to the podcast, I've been what you would call a serial entrepreneur. I have done 100 transactions in my career, buying and selling businesses. Most of those I was the buyer. A smaller number of those I was the seller. But one of the things that is been sort of the hallmark of my career is that in every case, when we went to sell a business, we were successful 100% of the time. Unfortunately, only 17% of attempted business transactions reached the finish line. And that just flies all over me. I hate that statistic. And when I sold my last company, I can't believe almost 4.5 years ago, I made the decision to start a practice to help business owners to achieve the same success that I have. I want every business owner to be able to sell their business on their terms when they want to for the value that they want. And so when I started thinking about what do I need to do to start attracting some attention to this cause and really kind of raising awareness, I decided that 2 things: I would write a book, which I did, my first book, Maximize Business Value. And secondly, I decided to get my CEPA, or Certified Exit Planning Advisor designation. And because I thought, if 100 transactions don't give me enough credibility, then perhaps I can get a certification that will give me credibility, or I can write a book that will give me credibility. So the real reason that I did it was just to lend some credibility to the work that we do helping business owners. That's in a nutshell why we did it.
Got it. And let me ask, did it round out, you did things the hard way, right? The school of hard knocks with all the acquisitions and all the exits. Did it fill in some gaps there, or did it more or less just affirm kind of some of the things you lived through?
It's really interesting. The certifying organization, the Exit Planning Institute, which is not far from where you used to live, it's up in Cleveland. They're an interesting organization, and the whole process to become certified. I mean, it's a week-long immersion in all of these things. I did learn a lot in that class, and it was really more about how to build a team of people to help business owners understand kind of all the different angles that they need to be thinking about. I learned about, financial planning. I learned about valuations. I learned about kind of the CPA side, the legal side of transactions. My career is focused mostly on the business side of the transaction, and I've always surrounded myself with people. But now the thing that I and other CEPAs say is that taking the course and getting the certification gives us a common language so that we can speak in shorthand with one another about business owners and about situations in their business. And so it did open my eyes quite a bit. Now we have a proprietary process that we use that I'll talk about later, but one of the other things that I got out of taking this course and getting my certification is the experience of Chris Snyder, who wrote another book. But it's about, I'm drawing a blank on it, but it's a great book. We've highlighted it on the podcast before about preparing a business for transition. He helped me kind of refine our process a little bit, thinking, he'd done a lot of transactions himself. He now is the owner of, and along with his son, the Exit Planning Institute, and just his thought process as I walked through with him, it did give me some additional thoughts about, okay, how can I really tweak what I'm doing to make it more usable? And so it was a very valuable course. And of course, now they do them live, they do them online. But to me, it's almost silly the reason why I went to go do it, to give credibility. 100 transactions don't give me enough credibility. Right. Writing a book doesn't give me enough credibility. And so, but in retrospect, it was a good and valuable investment of my time and money.
Yeah, and kudos to you for living the lesson of, you can't say I'm at the finish line for learning, right? There's always something more that I can learn. And not that you're going in there with a blank sheet of paper, but that it really rounded out. That I also find it ironic. So you're now a certified exit planning advisor, and our mutual friends for years have said Tom Bronson is certifiable. So it's nice that you really lived up to what people have been saying behind your back for many, many years. So,
well, yeah. So I was certifiable, but now I am certified. Yes, and so you're absolutely right. But I don't want to skip over that point. One of my very, very good friends coined a phrase. Let's see if we can remember who that was. Said, "Reading books is like getting a $15 MBA."
Yes.
Who was it who said that?
I repeated that, but I believe, somebody, of all the books that I read or people I've listened to, $15 MBA one at a time. And no downside to getting smarter. That's for sure.
And I am a lifelong learner. I devour books. I mostly for business, but also I'm actually currently, my sinful pleasure is I'm reading the Harry Potter series. And I have to tell you, boy, the books are way different from the movie, and it's but just be a lifelong learner, expand your mind. I'm very passionate about that.
Well, and you're not just a reader, you're a writer. We mentioned earlier your first book, again, Maximize Business Value, Begin with the Exit in Mind. That was published in early 2020. And so talk about your second book. Again, it's under the Maximize Business Value header, but it's the Maximize Business Value Playbook, 65 specific actions to dramatically increase the value of your business. What was the inspiration behind this new book?
So this book, actually, you might be interested in hearing this, kind of the whole litany. The original title for the original book was The Case for Exit Planning, because it's really walks business owners through the logic and why they should be thinking about their exit plan, even at early stages in their business. Always kind of define what that is. And when I mused that manuscript with my clients, I sent it to them and I said, "Hey, would you read this? Give me your thoughts. What are your impressions?" 100% of them came back with, "I love the book. I love the content. But if you ever bring a book that says exit planning all over the front of it, near my office, you're fired. I don't want my employees to know that I'm doing that." it made me step back and go, oh, golly, I need to think about how do I. So it really is all about maximize business value. Again, with the little tiny print on the front, I did slip an exit on there. With begin with the exit in mind, but it's still that journey of why a business owner should be thinking about this. But then it doesn't really give kind of the nuts and bolts. It gives you a strong case for why you should be thinking about it. In the second book, I thought, why don't I just give some of the nuts and bolts, right? Let's do just a dive right on into the deep end of what are some things that a business owner should do. And the original inspiration for it was a workshop that I did for the RSPA.
Okay. At Retail Now, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. It was at Retail Now. It was an hour and a half workshop where I did 50 things a business owner should do to maximize the value of his business. And it was so well received. I thought, man, this would make a great book. And so I thought, what a great follow on. Now that I've given them the strategy, or why they should think about the strategy at the beginning. Now let's just give them some hands-on things, 65 different things that a business owner can do. Actually, it was started as 50, but as I was writing the book, then I came up with 15 more that I thought, these need to be in there. So what I really wanted here was to give somebody actionable stuff in the book. And that's why that was my inspiration. Now that I've given you, if you've read the first book and now you understand you need to think about this, well, now here's some things you can go ahead and start taking action on. That's why it's my inspiration.
Got it. And just a side note for our listeners who are maybe new or not watching on video, I am wearing my RSPA polo shirt. So I'm the president and CEO of the Retail Solutions Providers Association, a lot of software companies, value-added resellers, hardware manufacturers, distributors, payment companies. And that's how Tom and I got to know each other from the time when he owned, operated, and purchased a lot of software organizations. So yeah, I do remember when he gave that presentation. Now talk about how you envision business owners reading this book and using this book. It sounds like it's not something that they just sit back in their easy chair and flip through and go, that was interesting. My guess is you want them to underline and circle and say, I got to start, I have to focus more on step number 3 or idea number 44 or things like that. But how do you envision it as the author, folks using it?
Yeah, in fact, even in the, as you've already mentioned, you graciously provided the forward for this, but in my introduction to the book, I say, I don't expect this to be a linear read. I don't expect them to start on page 1 and end on page 190. I expect them to peruse the table of contents and pick the sections that are important to them. Okay, I want to work on my financials. I want to work on the financial side of my business. There's 6 or 8 or 10 chapters on finance in there, and there's very specific things that they can go in and take a look at. And so I envision a business owner not really kind of reading this cover to. I would love it if they would read it cover to cover, and then kind of make notes of the places where they need to go back and start taking action. But I expect that most of them will go, I need to work on sales and marketing. So they'll go into the sales and marketing section of the book, and then there'll be, 6 or 8 chapters on sales and marketing, and we'll walk through those things to do it. Now, the other thing that we've added as a key, and this came from our editor, she is an amazing human. She edited my first book and actually retired between my first book and when the second book came out.
Because she read your book once she got to the end of the first one. She's like, I'm hanging it.
Yeah. I mean, why in the world would she, want to go on with her life after committing her name to that book? But Nancy Baldwin is her name. She's retired. So you could try to reach out to her, but she won't answer. She is an amazing human and an amazing editor. Spent her entire life editing books. I convinced her to come out of retirement just to edit my book. And she knows my style and all that. She goes, Tom, that would be my pleasure. And so I convinced her to come out of retirement just to edit this new book because I wanted the style to be, very similar. And As she was reading the chapters, my assistant Kim, she's really my operations manager, Kim Benson. She had come up with an idea of, why don't we give action items at the end of every chapter of things that people can do. It tells a story about why this is important. We go into a little bit of how you can do this, and then why don't we give them an action item or two at the end? And so when we sent that off to Nancy to edit, she came back and said, Tom, there's some chapters that have one thing, some that have three things. She said, I think you ought to harmonize and just every chapter have 3 actionable items. Mm-hmm. I thought, gosh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. So throughout the book, there are actionable things that you can do, and we refer you to free things that are available on our website that you can download as templates to do some of those things. And so that's the way I envision them to go and dial in on, well, I've got a real problem in my business. Let's see what Tom has to say about that thing. If it's in the 65, go read that short chapter, because I think the longest chapter is probably 3 pages long. I mean, they're pretty short. And what actions does he recommend? And go and do those things. That's the way I envision business owners using this tool. I want them to use it as a workbook. And there's a workbook tool that'll come out with it. So
great. So very, very, I've read it, a very practical book. Not just like aspirational or not just motivational, but like, here are things that you can do. And you mentioned about hopping around. That's why I almost feel like we were trained in school, start at page 1, move on to page 2. But when you're an adult and you don't have to prepare for a quiz or what someone's going to pop on. If you have a section and like you said, I'm pretty good in this, or I don't need to know this, it's not as vital to me right now, go jump ahead, right? That's how the pros do it.
Well, and that to me, I think that's partly what's wrong with our educational system. We don't teach people to just use their innate ability to go out and jump around and do some things. I almost wish that everybody had an individualized, study program. But that's the way I think. I don't focus on one thing for long periods, right? I jump around. I don't think that there's any such thing as multitasking. I just don't believe that exists. I think there's rapid task shifting, but this, again, like the first book, the second book is sort of written the way I think business owners think, and that is jumping from piece to piece.
Yeah. And I do have to say, last thing about your editor retiring after reading your book reminds me of a female friend that I had who was dating a guy. And then he said, we've been dating for a while. I've decided to become a priest. Right. It's one of those very difficult. They're like, well, how can I feel good?
I don't know what to read in it. Nancy was only 34 years old when she retired, exactly. But perhaps there's something I should read into that.
Well, I'm glad you brought her back. So, and so we talked about how the book is going to be practical. What are some of the specific areas that you do address in the book?
Oh, great. And it's a lot of the things that we cover in our process with our clients. So there's a section on corporate governance. There's a section on legal matters. There's a section on finance, sales and marketing, operations, so we really sort of touch on every component of every business. The way I think about business, because I've owned so many different businesses from restaurants to high-tech companies, is that you can take every business in America and put it into a box. And when you open up that box, the top 15% is what that business does. In your case, you're the CEO of a trade association, and you guys serve your members with all kinds of different things. Our business is a consulting practice. We've owned restaurants, different things. But once that top layer, we're never going to be the experts in that top layer. Underneath that, 85% of the business and every business in America, we think, are identical. Now, they don't follow the same processes and things, but it's all about process and operations and finance and sales and marketing. Those are the things, all business that apply to any business that you'll find. Those are the sections in the book. If you're looking for, how do I write software, better, bug free, this is not the place to go for that. But if I really want to understand better about developing KPIs that I can use in my business, or understanding how to better use my financial statements to run my business, or understanding why it's important to take inventory of your, if you're selling products, that's the kind of stuff you're going to find in the book.
Great. And I can say before I worked at the RSP for 17 years, I worked for, I guess I'll just say two brothers, Rick and Terry Peterson, and they started in publishing and then they moved into a bunch of other businesses, but they had been putting together to teach all their general managers and all their leaders, everybody on their leadership team, guiding principles. It was for growing the value of a privately held business. So it applied to every kind of business that they were in. And man, if that wasn't true, right? Like there were some, like we were in publishing, that publishing had some specifics, but in terms of having a system for sales, in terms of, right, you have to have this ongoing thing into how you're going to increase sales. Every business needs that, like controlling costs. Everybody needs that, right? And learning, providing outstanding customer service. Everybody needs to know that. So you're spot on with that. Again, I lived that. At first I thought, well, it's going to be way, way different. But yeah, when you get to the fundamentals of it, the fundamentals of the business are the fundamentals of another business as well.
And it doesn't matter if you're running a restaurant or a publisher or a point of sale software company.
Yep.
Fundamentals of the business are the fundamentals, and that's really where we focus on in this book.
Yeah, the goddess of commerce rules over every type of niche vertical. So
right.
Before we take a break, so some of the chapters in the table of contents, they have dollar signs after the title. So please tell me it's not like a toll highway that one of the action items at the end says, chip in $10 to help Tom out. What are the dollars?
That is brilliant. Since it hasn't actually come out yet, we're recording this on election day.
Yes.
Since it hasn't actually come out, I can always add like a little toll at the end of each chapter where you have to insert a quarter to open up the next thing, maybe. I love that idea. No, those are what I call the money chapters. And I got the idea from Alan Laken's book. Have you ever read Alan Laken, How to Get Control of Your Time in Your Life?
At Jameson Publishing, that was required reading, and people would call it "I've had the time of my life," is how they would refer to the title. Yeah, it's on my bookshelf behind me. Yeah,
but so it's one of my favorite books ever written. It's no longer in print, and anytime I can find copies of it, I buy them because I like to give it out. I think it's a brilliant book, but on the back cover. All right, so if you turn around the back cover to that. And on the very top of it, come down to, it says, to save time, turn to pages 158, 30, and 11. Because he says, hey, if you don't have time to read this book, here are the three things that I think are important that you should know. Right. And so I thought back to that book. That's one of my favorite early career books that I ever read. And I thought, why don't I just give some clues here about what I think the money chapters are, meaning these are the chapters that are going to have the most impact on any business. And so a great example of that would be the chapter on reviewing your financial statements by the 15th every month. If you don't do that as a business owner, then you need to start doing that because it can have a significant impact on the future value of the business. So what I did is, I think there might be a dozen or so that I also envision business owners going, okay, where are the dollar signs, and just doing the things on the dollar signs.
Yeah. Okay.
My point is, if you just do those, you're going to have a major impact on the value of your business long term.
Yeah. Great. I love it. And before we take a quick break, so one quote from How to Get Control of Your Time in Life by Alan Laken is, no matter how busy you are, you should always take the time to plan. And that really ties in with what we're talking about today. So again, we are talking with Tom Bronson. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Every business will eventually transition, some internally to employees and managers, and some externally to third-party buyers. Mastery Partners equips business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their businesses on their terms using our 4-step process. We start with a snapshot of where your business is today. Then we help you understand where you want to be and design a custom strategy to get you there. Next, we help you execute that strategy with the assistance of our amazing resource network. And ultimately, you'll be able to transition your business on your terms. What are you waiting for? More time? More revenue? If you want to maximize your business value, it takes time. Now is that time. Get started today by checking us out at www.masterypartners.com or email us at info@masterypartners.com to learn more.
This is Maximize Business Value permanent guest host, Jim Roddy. I'm kind of like the Jay Leno to Tom Bronson, or to Johnny Carson is how it worked out. And we are back with Tom Bronson. Again, he's a certified exit planning advisor and the author of the new book, Maximize Business Value Playbook, 65 specific actions to dramatically increase the value of your business. So, Tom, before the break, you mentioned this book is meant as a guide for building value in various areas of your business. Can you now dive a little bit deeper? Talk about some of the examples of things you cover in the chapters of the book.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, you picked right up on that. You are my Jay Leno if I'm Johnny Carson, because that's what he did. Named Jay Leno the permanent guest host. For those of you who are too young to know what that means, go look it up. And so I made a reference.
Who's Johnny Carson? Yeah,
right. I made a reference last week at a dinner to Cosmo Kramer. And there was actually somebody at the table that didn't know who that was. And so I was like, wow.
I was going through an airport with Abby Sorensen. You know, remember Abby from Business Solutions Magazine? And so she was in her, I think, mid-20s at that point. And in the Cleveland airport, it has a quote from Tammy Faye Baker. And I read the quote and she said, "Who's Tammy Faye Baker?" And I'm like, how do you even begin to explain?
You are joking.
No, but a lot of people don't. I mean, how would you know if you didn't? So
no, that's true. That's true. So a few examples for your questions. Well, I already mentioned one of them. It's get to know your financial statements. Make sure that you're reading your financial statements, that you're getting them by the 15th of every month, so that you can review them. And my logic on that is, financial statements are a history book, right? They're not forward thinking. They're not, they don't predict anything about the future, but the fresher the history is, the more actionable the things you can learn about things that you can do to change the outcome for next month or the month that you're already in. So that to me is a huge one that so many business owners don't. They look at their financial statements once a year. At tax time, or once a quarter, and I get arguments all the time from business owners that say, "You just don't understand. My business is too complicated. I can't get financial statements that fast." And the example I gave in the book was my last company, Granberry Solutions. We had 3 different operating divisions, and we had 17 different acquisitions that we did. I could do the financial statements by acquisition, I could do financial statements by division, and I could do financial statements consolidated. Our chief financial officer gave us the first draft of financial statements by the 5th day of every month. And this is a big middle market company, right? Mm-hmm. We got the first draft, and that went out to all the general managers and all the people responsible for different components. Comments were due by the 7th. And final statements by the 8th. Now, we were running a pretty sizable company with very complex financial statements. And by the way, we didn't have teams of hundreds of people. We had 4 people in our finance department, 4 people. And so if we could figure out a way to do that and deliver it, you can too in your business. Another biggie over in maybe the legal section is, and I had this conversation actually with an RSPA member yesterday, and someone who's been a good friend and a long-term client. Avoid lawsuits like the plague, right? A business that's involved in a lawsuit, whether you're the plaintiff or whether you're defendant, is unsellable, and avoid lawsuits. In fact, the conversation that I had with this great friend was, I've learned through the years, I've filed lawsuits, I've been the recipient of lawsuits, and I've learned through the years that it doesn't matter if I win, because I've won almost every legal battle that I've been in. Now that I'm on the back end of that, and it's years in the rearview mirror, I was a loser every time in legal fees, in damaged relationships, in distraction from my business. So get away from lawsuits. Don't do anything. Another one of my money chapters is on return on investment. How do you measure return on investment? And you should be measuring return on investment on everything in your business. It says actually twice in my book somewhere, the long running joke was that in my businesses, I wouldn't buy toilet paper if I didn't understand the return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually true, right? I mean, I wouldn't if I didn't know, but I do fortunately know how to express the return on investment in toilet paper.
I am not asking a follow-up question to that. Keep going,
it's wildly inefficient to send people out, right, to go to the press. And so those are a couple things. Documenting processes. And that's something you even touched on over at Jameson. I mean, that is just clearly, that is a business principle that so many business owners don't think about. They start their business, maybe it's just them, right? They start their business and they start doing stuff and then they hire their first employee and they teach that person how to do something. But it's all verbal, right? But there's nothing written. And then that person teaches the next person and so on until suddenly you wake up one day and you've got 100 people and they're doing things in a way that you just never envisioned and didn't want them to be done. And you don't like the way it is. Well, if you document your processes, it makes it so much easier to teach new hires how to do things the way you really want them done. And it also eliminates employee dependency, right? If something happens to one of your employees, and that includes you, a business owner or one of your key people, you want people to be able to pick up and move on. And even if it's a frontline employee, you want to be able to hire somebody and here it is. Here's the playbook on how we do this. So documenting processes is huge. And the last thing I'll mention is, as that applies to business owners, so many businesses are owner dependent, right? They completely depend on the owner to operate, and that drives the value of the business into the toilet. I mean, if you're a micro business, when I call that, like 5 million and down Main Street sort of business, and that business is dependent on the owner, it's almost worth nothing.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. If I get hit by a bus on my way to lunch, what's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my business? And if the answer is not a resounding, oh, everybody will be fine, then you got owner dependency issues, and you need to resolve those, because nobody wants to buy a business from an owner if the business is dependent on that owner.
Yes.
And so that's sort of some of the things that we talk about.
Yeah. And what you mentioned the word playbook, and I guess I'm hoping you can expand a little bit upon that, because a lot of times when folks hear process, they think step 1, this, step 2, this, step 3, you must do this. But playbook is more along the lines of, here are things for you to consider, like almost a playlist rather than a checklist. Some things need a checklist, but some things in businesses just mean you should consider this, so you don't say, whoops, I forgot about it. I guess, can you talk about that a little bit in terms of processes need to have some flexibility, but a process makes sure that it's not going to go below a certain floor, right? You can always build and do something different based on the situation, but it's not like coloring by numbers or something.
No. You're right. Well, you did mention there are certain things that should be colored by numbers, and that is the way you handle cash in the business, the way you handle your checks. That
payroll should not be a particularly creative process.
Right. Those things need to be step by step. Here are the things and how you do them. But then there's other things. As I think about in my old business, help desk. Every customer that calls a help desk has got a different problem. And so what we need here is sort of a process about how do we diagnose this?
Yes.
And what questions do we ask in order to kind of filter to, here's what the problem is. Let me solve that. And it's really more of a rather than a step-by-step process, it's more of a flow chart. If you think about it's moving all different directions, right? If the answer to this is no, then you kind of go a different direction on that and follow it differently. And it's really more about also teaching people the philosophy, right, of how you want to handle this. It is, we want to handle this way. And so everybody in the business we've got 10 people doing this thing, and we're all doing it largely the same way, maybe interjecting our own personality into the process, but we're all following a general principle about the process. That's really the way I think about it. And by the way, if you think about a business and you break it down, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of processes, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the business that you do every day. I'm not saying document all of those, but things that are critical to the business, the things that are, if this doesn't get done properly, it's going to damage us. Those are things that need to be documented. And typically in a business, that boils down to maybe 50 or 60 things. Yes. You might want to go deeper on, so that your training manuals are better. But it's, if something happened to this person, and they're the only person who knows how to do these 4 things, we need to make sure that they're well documented so that the next person can pick up.
Amen. And let me ask, so to dive even deeper in terms of helping the readers of your book, you mentioned like a template earlier. Can you talk about some of the tools that you have available if folks, if they want to do that, maximize their business value, right? They have the principles, they have some of the actions. Can you talk about some tools to actually help them execute on those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that comes in those 3 bullet points at the end. There's always 2 actions that you can take on your own, and then 1 that directs you back to either our website or other public documents that you can find. A great example of that is, in cash flow or budgeting. We think it's important that every business, prepare a budget, in advance of the upcoming year. Now, Charles Koch, who arguably is one of the greatest businessmen who've walked the face of the earth, right, at Koch Industries, he argues in his book, Good Profits, that you shouldn't budget. Now, that is a very different view than what I would take. Most humans need to budget in advance. And so his businesses are different, and it's a great book, but a difficult read. But I highly recommend it. But, we say you should do that. And so a lot of business owners look at, well, where do I even start? How do I even start? Well, we have a template, right? That's available on our website that you can just go in. We give you the URL, how to get to it. You can go just download our template and off you go, right? We've got templates for, cash flow. For one of the things that we talk about in the book is product penetration rates, meaning how many of your customers, of your available potential customers for every product that you sell, how many of them are using it? Is it 10%? Is it 20%?
Yeah.
Because if you understand your penetration rate, let's say you've got a product that every one of your customers can use, that they could pay you $10 a month for, but only 20% of them are using it. Well, that 80% becomes the green field of growth opportunity, cross-selling products into an existing customer. So we even have a template that's available that contemplates product penetration, all kinds of things. But overarching, as soon as you buy the book, one of the things I say in the introduction is go download a workbook, because we've actually got a workbook. So you don't have to mark up the book itself. We've got a workbook where you can start working through these things.
That's great.
As you work through it. And the workbook covers every chapter in the book, and it's a free download that you can get on our website. So there's all kinds of additional free tools that business owners can use in their business.
Good, because nothing more frustrating than trying to start from a blank sheet of paper, building something you don't really know. So glad you're giving everybody a head start for sure.
And if you find something in the book that it's not clear, then we always direct you, call me, right?
Yeah.
My cell phone is right on our website. So if somebody has a question about, well, this wasn't that clear, great, because we want you to ask that question, because if it wasn't clear to you, it's probably also not clear to hundreds of other business owners.
Right. Yeah.
And so we would appreciate feedback, or could you give us a tool that'll do this? Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that.
Yeah.
We tell people all the time, you can do everything that we do in your business for free. You don't have to engage with us. If you just buy the book and just listen to all of our podcasts and read all of our blog posts and follow us on all of our social media, we're very transparent. We tell you all the things that you can do to do it, but most business owners won't, because they get caught up in the day-to-day of their business. So
the grind.
We're all about education and providing all kinds of tools.
Yeah. And so I have a few questions before we wrap up that aren't directly connected with the book. Like one of them is like, clearly you're passionate about this, right? I've seen you speak at events, listen to your podcast, right? It's never like this guy's faking it or he's bored with himself. So can you talk about where does that come from? And quite frankly, you were a successful business owner and then sold your business. Like, why not just pursue a life of leisure, right? Why not just doing more golfing and napping and reading? Where's the passion come from?
Well, I do all of those things. I golf and read. And
Not
so,
full time though; it's part time.
Yeah, but retirement is just not a word that works in my vocabulary, right? And,
Okay.
I'm at the end of the baby boomers, right? The baby boomers range from my age, which I am 58 now, up to 78. There's a 20-year span of baby boomers. And we were the people that invented the 60-hour work week. The rest of you are welcome. And we like to work. We find value in our work. Nothing. So when I sold my last business, by the way, that wasn't my first transaction, right? I'd sold other businesses before. Why didn't I write off before? Because I'm all about creating and expanding and doing new things. The only ask from my wife is, please don't bankrupt us, right? Go out and take these risks and I do. I am less risk averse than almost any human. And so I'm a wild risk taker, but I won't damage our retirement, honey. So, or at least I don't intend to. Hope she's not listening. But one of the things that just for whatever reason has always just given me a charge of electricity is when I'm explaining something that is complicated. And suddenly you see the light bulbs come on and they go, oh my gosh, I suddenly get it. That just gives me goosebumps when that happens. My wife is a teacher. She has her doctorate in clarinet. And so she teaches at the college level and has for years on high school and middle school. We both are kind of wired the same way that we're just so passionate about teaching other people stuff. And I hope that for the rest of my life that I'll have the opportunity to teach people new things. But there is nothing that charges me more than when I engage with a new client and we talk about the financial statements and I just don't even look at my financial statements. And a year later, they actually look forward to the 15th so that they can see what's going on. Right. And it's just, I sit back sometimes. I was with a client a couple of weeks ago who had a mess, and we engaged about 3 years ago, and we had our regular monthly accountability meeting. And I sat down, and she just started ticking off all these strategic things that she's thinking about, and I'm just like, where did this come from? When you were buried with the day-to-day of the business. And now all you're doing is thinking about strategically, how do you make your business better? Mm-hmm. And she beamed with joy, and it just gives me that energy. And so I love teaching. Frankly, if I didn't do anything else, I would try to go find some college or junior college that would me an adjunct title and let me just teach entrepreneurialism because I just love seeing the light bulbs come on, and I'm just very passionate about that. And I think that comes across in my book and when I'm on stage. I'm just very passionate about that.
For sure. Yeah. You're not doing this because you have to. You're clearly doing this because your heart is in it, not just because your head is in it or it funnels stuff in your bank account. So
exactly.
So for folks, maybe we should have covered this earlier, but talk a little bit about your practice and how you help drive clients towards their ideal exit, like beyond the book, beyond the speaking. What does your practice do?
So when we engage with a client, it always follows a process, you might imagine.
Wow, surprising.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? We have a 4-step process that we use in the business. It starts with an end-to-end assessment of the business, where we've got 65 things we cover in this book. There are 500 things we cover in our assessment. So the book is basically the greatest hits of our assessment tool that we use. We developed that assessment tool through the years of going to the school of hard knocks and not knowing and wishing that there was a tool like this available for my businesses. Yeah. So we created it for that reason. So the first thing we do is an assessment of the business. It takes a whole day to get through those 500 questions, and we deliver a 40-page document that says every question we ask, how it was answered, and then how we graded them. And we give a score in the business on how ready it is if a transaction came tomorrow, right? And so they can see by department, overall for the business, kind of how that works. The second thing we give in that step 1, which is called the transition readiness assessment, is an opinion of enterprise value. We tell you what the business is worth, because shockingly, most business owners have no idea how businesses are valued. They've got some idea in their mind about what they'd like to get for their business, but they have no idea about how businesses in their industry are traded. And so we do the research and we come back and we say, if you sold tomorrow, here's what you can expect for it. And almost always that turns into what I lovingly call the Shark Tank conversation, where they're like, what do you mean? I thought my business was worth 3 times that or 5 times that or whatever. Well, then we walk them through the math and help them understand. So that's step 1. Step 2 is, now that we know where you are, step 2 is, let's dream a little bit about where you want to be. When do you want to exit this business? Because it's a foregone conclusion that everybody eventually exits their business, whether it's by force or death or by design. And we think it should be by design. And so if we can get you to paint as clear a picture about where you want the business to be when that time comes, then we can build a roadmap to go from where we are today to where you want to be. It's called the roadmap for value acceleration. Step 3 is the easy part. It's the execution of that roadmap. And think of it as kind of a quarterly, here is a list of things that we need to do quarter by quarter that builds until we can reach that end. And the execution phase, our clients can either go do it on their own, or they can engage with us, and then we work with them all the way through the process to get there. And then step 4 is decision time. Do I stay or do I go? And 9 times out of 10, Jim, what I hear from our business owners is, wow, I'm having so much more fun and making so much more money. I really don't want to go. But fine, that's okay. You can stay. So that's really about how we engage. And just so that if there's somebody new listening to this podcast, it doesn't cost you anything to get on the phone and talk to me. I'll spend 2 or 3 hours on the phone just learning about your business and thinking of ways that we might be able to help before we ever ask you if you'd like to engage with us. And that is always a valuable exercise for business owners to go, oh, I should have been thinking about that. And so that's free of charge. And so you can schedule that right on my website.
Great. No, it's wonderful. And again, it's teaching people. And oftentimes, like you said, they say, boy, now that this business is under control, this is what I always envisioned it would be. And it's way more enjoyable. And maybe I don't want to exit at this point, but it's way better to have a choice than having one presented to you that you have no choice. You just have to react to it. A couple more questions for you just to wrap things up. So again, as you know, this podcast is all about maximizing business value. Can you share with the audience like one thing that you heard recently that you'd recommend business owners do to increase the value of their business?
Boy, and I even knew this question was coming, and here I am shuffling papers on my desk because I wrote down a great answer to that, and I hate to not give the answer that I wanted to give. So here it is.
For those listening on audio, he did put his glasses on and shuffle papers. This is legit. This is not an act.
So I could see that, by the way. It is one piece of advice. Refuse to accept what you can get and focus on what you want. Let that sink in. Refuse to accept what you can get. In other words, refuse your circumstances that you have today.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to change the outcome for tomorrow? So refuse to accept what you can get and focus on what you want. I heard that somewhere recently, either on a podcast or read it in a book. And I wrote it down and I Googled it. I can't find where that came from. So you know how that works. I'm going to take credit for
exactly
it.
Right. Exactly right.
So that's my advice is business owners, a lot of times kind of just fall into that rut of, this is what it is. No, it doesn't have to be what it is. Refuse to accept where you are. Focus on where you want to be and drive that way as hard as you can. That's my advice.
Yep, absolutely. And you have agency, right? Just because the situation presents to you, you can adapt your business, you can adapt your business practices. There's nothing that's necessarily forcing you to do it.
Exactly.
So bonus question. I know you've asked a similar question on your pods before, but not what personality trait has gotten you into the most trouble? What personality trait has gotten you out of the most trouble over the years, Tom?
I think it is my ability to just keep talking until someone just lets it go. Right. I mean, I have what most people erroneously think is the sales trait, and that's the gift of gab. No.
Yeah.
You want salespeople who understand how to ask questions. But I have the ability to think quickly on my feet. And even though I've been in trouble plenty through the years, killing the silence with lots and lots of noise until someone just finally goes, fine, go.
Right. It helps you get your point across. Yes.
That's probably gotten me out of more trouble. It also, ironically, has gotten me into a lot of trouble.
Yes. Well, it's a sword that cuts both ways. That's for sure.
Yes, it is.
And how can viewers and listeners get in touch with you? What's the easiest way to connect?
Well, they found this podcast, so follow the trail to our website, masterypartners.com. Right on the website, there is a button that you can click to schedule a call directly with me and use this magic of Zoom like we use to record this podcast. My cell phone is right on there. Don't hesitate. That's probably the message that I want to get across here. If you think you probably ought to have a conversation with me, don't delay. Just pick up the phone and dial. You can find my cell phone right on our website, 817-797-1488. Dial the phone and let's talk and see if there's anything we can do to help you.
And working with you is like working with a small business. It's not an 800 number, and an agent will be in touch with you, right? And you fill out this form, right? They'll be able to talk to you and business person to business person.
It's ironic too. Most people think, well, they look at that and go, you put your cell phone right on the website. Yes, that's the only number you're going to find on our website is my cell phone number. People say, well, is it just you? Or are you a one-man shop? No, we have 10 partners at Mastery Partners, but through conversation with me, because I always take initial conversations, and I love that. I love talking with entrepreneurs. And then I'll direct them to the right place, right? It might be to Dave Casey or Kim or John or one of the other folks, but I always take the first line of defense. Call me first.
I love it. Well, Tom, thank you very much for being the host's guest today on your own podcast. It was great talking with you.
It was so fun, and I promise you I'll get you a number 5 t-shirt, since maybe it'll be one of those Tux t-shirts with a 5 on it.
Yeah, you know what I used to do? It reminds me from soccer practice where we would play shirts and skins. And because I never tanned very well, I would have guys with their 5 just slap me on the chest. And then there would be this impression of a red 5. Maybe next time we get together, that's what you can do.
Well, that's a great idea. Maybe I need to go lay out and just like do a cutout of a 5, get nice and sunburned. And then you got the white 5 that's now a permanent part of your chest.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have brought that idea. Maybe I shouldn't have the gift.
I do know where we can get a tattoo.
Wonderful.
I will if you will.
Based on that, it is time to wrap this up. You can find Tom Bronson at masterypartners.com. And of course, if you'd like to connect with me as well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Jim Roddy, Jimroddy. And if you look, I'm not the Jim Roddy who owns the Bear Creek in Colorado. I'm not the Jim Roddy broker in Australia. And I'm not the Jim Roddy who's a city manager of Ireland. I'm again the CEO of the RSPA, an author and a speaker based in Raleigh, North Carolina. Again, this is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners on how to build long-term sustainable value in your business. Be sure to tune in each week and follow us wherever you find this podcast. So until next time, I'm Jim Roddy, reminding you to learn about exit planning and prepare your business by reading books written by certified exit planning advisors while you maximize business value. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to the Maximize Business Value podcast with Tom Bronson. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their terms. Learn more on how to build long-term sustainable business value and get free value-building tools by visiting our website, www.masterypartners.com. That's master with a Y, masterypartners.com. Check it out.
That was perfect. I wouldn't make any changes on that.